This week on Two Legs, a legend joins us.
That's right. We are talking to the one and only Ken Michaels as he celebrates surpassing 2,000 shows. That's 2,000. Yes, 2,000. We're talking about his radio show. We're talking about his podcast. And he's here with us right now.
And we'll also be talking about from 2000 on, many of Paul McCartney's collaborations that you won't find on his own album. Songs that he sang with other people as duets, songs he produced, songs he plays bass, that kind of thing. Side projects of Paul McCartney in the 2000s.
Stay tuned. Hi, McCartney fans, and welcome to another episode of Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We are a Paul McCartney talk show mainly dealing with the solo career of Paul McCartney. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Tom Hunyadi, and you may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk, where myself and my three co-hosts talk all things solo McCartney, and we're joined by one of my co-hosts today. We'll get to him in 1 second, but as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, my backwards traveler, which I hope one day he gets back to that and does another episode. He is Andy Nichols. Andy, what's going on, my friend?
Hanging in there, Tom and Ken. Good to see you tonight. Motoring through, and I'm happy to be distracted and kind of focus on something else besides work and doing another great Two Legs episode. So happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you were able to take a break from your busy schedule. I know you've been, going crazy with the school work or the videos and whatnot because of this crazy time right now. But anyways.
I'll take me back into just escape into the world of all things
right.
Mac, right?
Yeah, exactly. All things Maca is a great place to be, in my opinion, anyways. But like I said, I have one of my Talk More Talk co-hosts today. He's here, and obviously, if you know him from his radio show, Every Little Thing, where, yes, he does play every little thing. It could be something famous like All My Loving, or it could be something, rare that you may not have heard of, something like Ballad of Skeletons. And so he plays every little thing on that show. It's a great show. We're going to talk about that show briefly. As I said, he's also my co-host on Talk More Talk. And he's also the co-host with Darren DeVivo and Alan Cozen on the wonderful podcast Things We Said Today. This show has been around since, I believe, 2012. Ken, I think, is when you guys got going.
2011 or
yeah,
2012.
Maybe 2011.
Yeah.
I think my cousin and I discovered the show in 2012. I think it was episode 9, where it was the Magical Mystery Tour. It was with you and Steve Marinucci was it was just you two hosting at that time. And I just remember, you guys going back and forth about it. And I said, well, this is my kind of show. I think this is a show I could listen to for a while. And obviously, I'm talking about Ken Michaels. Ken, great to have you back. And, I hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Tom. First time on the video podcast. And you and Andy doing a great job. It just looks so professional. I'm very impressed with everything.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to, step it up a little bit. I'm not gonna. This is kind of like how I really wanted the show to be. But my cousin did a great job, David. I'm so happy that I was able to start the show with him. And obviously it was just audio back then. But then once Andy came in, he was agreed, and he thought video was a good idea. So I'm happy to say it's a video cast now. So thank you, Andy, for all that stuff.
No problem. Our next goal is to be live, like you all do. Talk.
Will that happen?
We'll see. We'll see.
I'd like to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It could happen. It could happen. Obviously some hurdles will have to be cleared with, set time and stuff like that. But you never know.
Okay.
Yeah. But on today's show, not only are we going to talk about Ken surpassing his 2000th show between his radio show and the podcast that he does, we're also going to be talking about Paul McCartney and his collaborations and contributions that he's done with other artists, whether it be somebody else's album. Let's see here, kind of like maybe Old Sock, as we all know, Paul McCartney duetted with Eric Clapton on this album. It could be a compilation album like Rave On, where it's Buddy Holly tribute album, where he contributes a song on that. It could be a soundtrack like Vanilla Sky, where he contributes the song Vanilla Sky.
Right.
So we're going to be talking about all these songs, songs that we find interesting or we just plain out like. And maybe if you haven't heard these songs, we'll mention them. And, if you want to take the time, I believe all these songs are on YouTube, so you can check them out there. If you like them, that's great.
I'll post 2000 posts from 2000 on.
Yeah, exactly. 2000 to 2019, let's say.
Cool.
And I just want to give a shout out to my boy Dylan Seedy for making this list for us. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Dylan. You the man.
Yes. I love the music. I love the music to open and close the show from Dylan.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, he did a great job. Great job. Yeah. But before we get to that, obviously, Ken, you had this awesome milestone that it should be congratulated. So congratulations on surpassing 2,000 shows.
Thank you.
This is and it's just the Beatles show, because you started out not doing Beatles shows, right?
On college radio, I did a variety of different shifts. I did top 40. I did album rock. Okay. I've also done adult contemporary shifts on the air, but most of what I've done now is Beatles.
Right.
As far as on air.
So, and that's what that's where this. As soon as you started doing the on-air Beatles show, that's where this 2000 takes place. This 2000 from the time you started doing Beatles shows.
Right, March of 1982 on college radio.
Wow.
Yep. Right around the time, right before Tug of War. That gives you an idea
there you go.
of how long I've been doing this.
Right. So take us into creating this show. I mean, what did you have other shows to listen to kind of give you an idea of how this should be? I mean, were you planning on this did you just plan this as you were going? How did you see this radio station or this, I'm not sorry, not radio station, but this radio show? I mean, what were your thoughts going into it?
Well, the thing was, I don't recall there being any Beatles programs on the radio when I went to college.
There was no breakfast with the Beatles or
no,
with the Beatles.
Those shows started a little bit later.
Okay.
The only show that I recall before my show was a syndicated show that Ringo hosted called Ringo's Yellow Submarine, which I think Westwood One syndicated, I believe.
Okay.
But I don't recall there being anything weekly. You might have an occasional Beatles special on the radio, like a Beatles A to Z weekend or something, but not on a weekly basis. So when I started doing the show, I had nothing to go by other than just starting out playing the music, playing a mixture of the group and the solo, and gradually developing it. I always had a knack for doing trivia, music trivia. Going back to my high school days, and I incorporated a lot of the games that I used to do for friends of mine that had nothing to do with the Beatles. It would just be on pop music, and I would mix that into the show. And I found a local record store to give me prizes to give away. This was kind of unheard of.
Right.
Yeah, for a student to take the bull by the horn there and do all this extra work that the station wasn't going to do. And I got prizes to give away every single week.
Well, plus it was free publicity for the record store too, I would imagine.
That's all it was. I mean, there's no money exchanged at all. It was all trade. But so much of what I gave away were just singles. But people love to win anything. And
Yes.
the odd thing about doing this show, because the station it was on, WNYT, was only heard on our college campus, which was only a few miles radius, but we were also on cable television.
Mm,
And it was just an audio signal, and usually
okay.
something like Swap and Shop would be on at the same time, and the audio signal itself was in mono. But
Mm,
yet we developed the following for all the different shows we had during the week, and I developed the following for a year and a half doing
okay.
my show there. And 1 year out of that, I had a co-host too who left the show,
Right.
and I didn't even know if I wanted to continue after that. But
Mm,
I had the show, I had the music, the trivia, the thematic sets that you're used to hearing, I think developed more when I started doing my show in New Jersey on WDHA, where I
okay.
was heard for 10 years on Sunday mornings. So I developed that, and then I started having news every single week.
Right, and that's what I was going to ask you as well. The news segment. I mean, obviously, I hate when people say, back when we didn't have the internet, but obviously back then you didn't have the internet. So how were you getting your news back then?
A variety of sources. It would either be Beatles Monthly magazine, or a Beatle fan magazine, or a Good Day Sunshine magazine, any of the more minor fanzines, wherever I can get any news. And I would spread it out over weeks, because
Right.
some weeks I would have nothing brand new to add or very little to add. But
Mm,
sometimes I might have a ton of stuff, like when Beatles Monthly would come out, and I would add a lot of that,
right.
or be a Beatle fan, and I'd spread that out over weeks.
Okay.
So, and whatever new stuff I heard about during the week. And since it was a local show, I can also add stuff like on your telly, I used to call it,
Mm,
any
okay.
TV broadcast for the week,
Gotcha.
that kind of thing.
And,
So, by incorporating all these different elements, news, trivia, different Beatle games, thematic sets, interviews, mixing that with Beatle and solo Beatle music, and also everything else, cover versions, tribute songs, side
right.
projects like the ones we're going to discuss here, that
Right.
helped to make it so new and fresh for a
Hmm.
Beatles show. It was not a look back at the 60s with the Beatles. It was a
Right.
mixture of everything up
Everything.
to that point.
And
Yeah.
plus, you being in radio, I mean, you were getting firsthand knowledge of when there was upcoming releases as well. What's release dates, I would imagine.
Well, not as much as you think, because I still found out the more detailed stuff from the fanzines.
Okay.
I mean, the radio station wouldn't care that much about a new CD single coming out from Paul with bonus tracks. I had to find that out by myself. And
Okay.
most of the time, that was from those sources,
Mm.
and later on, Steve Marinucci entered the picture, because he had his Abbey Road website where he used to
Ah,
post news every single day.
okay.
And then his news went on Beatles Examiner, and
Mm,
that was absolutely invaluable. I mean,
mhm.
nowadays we take it for granted. You can have news every single day, and
Right.
people can just feed it to you on Facebook or
Mhm.
Twitter. In those days, it took until I remember seeing news more on a frequent basis through Steve.
Mhm.
You know, i- we had limited sources, but they were good sources.
Okay.
So
When did you decide to call the show Every Little Thing?
when my show was taken by XM Radio, and I was on XM for about 6 years, from 2003 in August that year through January of 2009.
Okay.
I was never on Sirius. I
Okay.
was on XM Radio.
Before they merged.
Mm,
There were two separate companies then.
Yep.
right.
And when the merger happened, which was towards the end of 2008, I lost all my shows. I actually had 3 shows on XM Radio. I had Every Little Thing. I did short features for their 60s channel. I did Beatle News on the 60s on 6. If
Okay.
you ever listen to that channel,
Oh yeah.
back in those days, I broadcast news every single week,
What
and I
channel was
had
Every
Beatle
Little Thing
breaks.
on? Ken, what channel was on
It was
XM?
There was a channel called Fine Tuning,
I
which
remember
was an amazing channel. You remember that?
channel 76.
Okay, I'm
Remember
not
the
sure what the number was anymore, but it was an all eclectic music channel.
awesome channel.
Everything was mixed together. You can mix
I
rock
love it.
music with classical music, and especially progressive rock, which
Sounds
Yeah.
like
really
my
fit.
iPod.
Yeah, it was like an anything goes format. So because my show was all over the place with the Beatles show, it really worked well there on that channel. And it was a guy, Ben Smith, programmed the channel. And once the merger happened, they completely got rid of the channel.
That was unfortunate.
Was there any differences from doing the show on XM as opposed to regular radio?
Terrestrial?
You know,
oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to something that, and I hope I don't bore people with this, something called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which only pertains to digital broadcasting and streaming. There are laws that I think it's to protect the artist, but you're not permitted to play more than 4 songs from the same artist within a 3-hour block. So since XM was considered streaming, you would never hear more than 4 Beatles songs on my 1-hour show for every little thing.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, you could hear 4 solo John Lennon, 4 solo Paul McCartney. You could hear 4 traveling Wilburys if you wanted to. But it forced you to be creative that way. You know, I could play as many cover versions as I want. I could play 4 Joe Cocker cover versions of Beatles songs if I wanted to, but not more than 4.
Right.
You know, so, you know, it made you work harder to come up with the themes, but because there's so much more music once you add all the solo music, that makes it so much easier.
So,
right there.
So take us through then a day in the life of Ken Michaels putting a show together. Like, okay, so your syndicated show, it's an hour long. These are the shows that get sent out to, you know, hundreds of let's say websites or streaming sites for everybody to hear. So take us into the day in the life. I mean, how long does it take you to put one of these shows together?
Every little thing, the syndicated show takes more work than anything that I do. Between this, things we said today, and Talk More Talk. Talk More Talk, as you know, I just show up and talk. and Kit handles everything else. God bless you,
Kit. Thank you, Kit.
Things we said today, I show up with Darren and Alan, and I actually edit that show. Now it's every 2 weeks. That takes about 5 hours of editing to remove about 10 minutes of content. It's easy work, but it's very tedious. But with every little thing, it takes about 4 days of work to put together. Because I have to write a script, I have to time everything. Every show has 3 segments. The last segment has a theme to it. If there is an interview, which most of my shows now do, that is more work than anything else. That's in the second segment of the show. Whenever I do an interview and say it's an hour long, I have to pick what I think are the 2 or 3 best bits of that interview. And that's not easy to do. And then you have to mix that into the show, and you pick out what songs will follow those clips. And from that, well, hopefully you have a thematic set idea already planned out, but you build around that second segment. And all my shows run 54 to 58 minutes in length. There are 2 breaks in between. So I have to make sure that it never goes over 58 minutes. And I try to make it closer to 54 if I can, for any stations that run commercials or anything else, promos, PSAs, anything. So because it has to be timed, you know, sometimes I have to make a lot of adjustments. I have to change songs, put in shorter songs, you know. So it's a lot more work than you'd think. And I have to voice everything, mix the music together. So yeah, and then I also add trivia as a bonus element, which people can place into the 2 breaks, a question in the first break and an answer in the second break. And a lot of stations do just that, but that's extra work. So, and then when that's done, I put them together as a zip file. And the great thing about working today, as opposed to when I first started, when radio stations would get syndicated shows on vinyl, and you had to mail it all out, you just put it on a site now, you give stations a link, they can download it, there's no cost. You know, that's such an advantage now. But still, I have to, at the same time, I try to get more stations to take the show. That's very time consuming. I try to, I have to look into getting advertising or an underwriter. That's a whole other job. You know, there's so much that goes into all this when you're doing everything by yourself.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. When did you then make these? I take it then after was it XM? What
Yeah,
is that? What it was called?
XM radio.
XM radio. Then you made the switch to WNHU.
No, actually, right around that time, I started a podcast called Fab Forum,
Oh.
and I was on that show for 2 years. I think that was one of the first Beatle podcasts. I'm
Right.
not sure if it was the first.
Okay.
From that, I went to work with Steve
Right.
Marinucci on Things We Said Today around 2011, 2012. Also close to that time, actually it was around that time, in 2010, there was a company out of Queens, New York, that kind of helped me kickstart my show for syndication. But before the show started as a syndicated show, they were approached. This was a company that usually does a lot of specialty programs tied into like box sets that come out. If there's a new Neil Diamond box set or a Bob Dylan
Right.
box set, they are asked to produce a show and to syndicate it and get stations for it. Well, they thought it'd be a great idea to have me host a show for Band on the Run for when the box set came out. So
Oh,
I
cool.
actually hosted the show. And
Wow.
that led to stations, some of those same stations that took that show, taking every little thing. But the great thing about doing that, and this is the only time this has ever happened to me in all of radio, because I've done so much as a producer in addition to hosting shows, all I had to do was read the script.
Right.
I didn't have to produce it. I did look over the script if there were any changes to be made, but that was so cool. And that Band on the Run special, it aired on over 230 radio stations.
Oh, wow.
And
Awesome.
that was, along with XM radio, the biggest thing to happen in my career.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That was to promote the archive edition?
Yeah, that was the first one that Paul put out,
Right. 2010.
2010. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. Very cool. You know, one of the things then that I really look forward to when I was listening to your show, Every Little Thing, and Things We Said Today were your interviews. So let's talk about your interviews for a second, because you've been fortunate enough to really interview a lot of the people that were in the studio and working with John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and as well as a lot of authors as well.
Right. Well, that's one of my greatest joys, is doing the interviews that I do. And also, in addition to the shows that I do, my interviews also go on my website, and the website takes a lot of work.
Right.
So from the very beginning, the first interview I recall ever doing was a guy named John Wiener, who put out a book on John Lennon called Come Together, John Lennon in His Time. It was all about John's political activities. That was when the show first started on college radio on WNYT. When I was on WDHA in New Jersey, where the show ran for 10 years, I interviewed a lot of people, especially May Pang was on a few times, Dennis Ferrante, who was one of John's engineers. I loved talking to studio people like David Spinoza. And it was pretty cool. I mean, most people wouldn't think to interview studio people. They would think to interview the superstars, the stars behind the music, but not the people who are behind the scenes. And I like doing that.
All those, right. The Roy Sakalas and all those people, right?
Yeah, I never did get to interview Roy, though. There's still a lot of people from the solo recordings that I want to interview. Kenny Asher is someone that I interviewed back in those days. And Kenny, I got to go back and put that into my website, because it was a great interview.
I'd love to hear that.
He worked on the Mind Games album, and he worked on Walls and Bridges with John.
But rock and roll, I think, too.
Not sure.
Definitely
I'd have to check on
Walls and Bridges, definitely those two.
Oh yeah, Walls and Bridges and Mind Games.
Yeah.
But he also, apart from being a great keyboard player, he's a great songwriter and arranger, and he's written songs with Paul Williams, like The Rainbow Connection was written by Kenny Asher. You know, You and Me Against the World was the song that he wrote with Paul Williams. So people like that. And then, you know, while I was at WDHA, Billy J. Kramer, I interviewed, and it was, I had a great time during those 10 years. That's where I really developed the show, Every Little Thing, especially as a live show, which I think is me at my best doing that. But then if you look at my website, there's so many people ever since that I've interviewed. Carl
A lot of
Perkins.
a lot of great individuals on your website.
You know, Mark Lewison is a joy. Anytime I talk to him, so many great authors: Chuck Gunderson, Jim Birkenstadt.
Yes.
You know, Kid O'Toole.
Yeah.
Ken Womack.
I think I told you this on Talk More Talk, but before I started listening to Things We Said Today and Every Little Thing, I literally had 3 Beatles books. I had the Beatles anthology, I had the Imagine John Lennon book from the '88 film, and I had the Lewison recording manual or whatever, recording book. And that was it. That's all the Beatle books I had. And then now, literally, I am probably close to 200. So
there you go.
You're going to have to move to a bigger house very soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Between that and our music collection.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
I'll tell you, in the last year, because Above Us Only Sky was a big thing coming out as, you know, as a video release. I got to interview Elliot Mintz, which was a joy. Michael Epstein, the director behind the film. Dan Richter, John and Yoko's personal assistant. So all at once, a whole bunch of Lennon-related people, and that was great to do. You know, I love doing that. And then there's all the Wings members I've interviewed, Gary Van Syok and Adam Ippolito of Elephant's Memory. I love talking to all those people. Paul Perkins was a great honor for me.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Talk about some of your proudest moments, your greatest achievements throughout the years.
Definitely that Band on the Run special. You know, that was a big highlight for me. And not only that, but I worked as a producer in New York City for the ABC radio networks. And that was for almost 20 years. Back in 1998, we were asked to produce a special for the John Lennon Anthology box set. And I produced the show. I didn't host the show. And it was the only special connected to the Lennon Anthology box set to be heard in the country, and I produced that. And also, and I'm more than happy to say this on every show, in 1992, Paul McCartney was celebrating his 50th birthday, and on my show in New Jersey on WDHA, I did a special on my listeners' favorite 50 McCartney songs of all time, and that list ended up in Club Sandwich.
Crazy.
So my name is there as part of the you know, the back catalog of Club Sandwich issues, and my name is in there along with the radio station and the results of the top 50 McCartney songs of all time.
Wow. Amazing.
So yeah, so those are great accomplishments. You know, just the fact that I can't believe I'm still doing this for 38 years, and you know, it's a remarkable thing. Someday when it comes to your work on the Beatles, guys, you're going to look back and not realize how much you've done. You don't think about it as you're doing it. You just keep on going. And people remind me of shows that I did a long time ago that I barely remember because I've done so many of them. And, you know, the podcast shows I'm very proud of. It's really remarkable to me that if you take a look at my 2,000 shows, more than 60% of that is Every Little Thing. It started out as the All Request Beatles show, and it became Every Little Thing on XM Radio. The podcast shows, I didn't start till 2009. But a lot of people know me more for the podcast shows, and that's less than 25% of my output. So, but it's a whole new world out there, and people love the on-demand world. So some people know me more for Things We Said Today and Talk More Talk than Every Little Thing. But Every Little Thing, I'm really probably most proud of because it's my baby. It's what I created from start to finish.
From scratch, and it's years ago. Yeah.
But you know, it's a good old-fashioned radio show. Play the music, you mix the music, you talk about the songs, you give information, you throw in a little bit of trivia, you give away prizes, you throw in news, you have a thematic set to make people think what songs might work in a set, all that stuff. And, you know, I'd like to see that kind of radio continue and thrive, but there's so much competition out there, and podcasts, sometimes I think they're taking over. But I'd like to see those kind of shows continue, you know, because we need more creative programming like that.
So you mentioned 38 years. which is a great long time. So after 38 years, is Ken Michaels still having fun?
I'm more fascinated with the Beatles than I ever have been before. I'm having a lot of fun just by turning people on to their full catalog. The greatest joy for me is anytime somebody listens to one of my shows and says, I never heard that song before. Where can I find that? Whenever that happens, and this could also happen when I'm on Facebook,
Right.
when I post a song off YouTube,
Yeah.
and people discover this music, whether it's Beatles, whether it's solo, just exposing people to the full catalog. Because, to me, the Beatles catalog, I've said this, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, Tom, but the Beatles catalog to me is everything they've done. It's not just what they did as a band. It continues through all their works. Beatles catalog to me means the works of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and not just together. So once you present the Beatles that way, and people start to hear it that way, they could be influenced and they could appreciate all that other music too. And just like this other side of the Beatles that we're about to talk about, in this case, Paul, all these side projects, that's something else to explore. It's all part of his history.
Right. I believe it was you were doing a Paul duet thematic set, and these were a lot of these songs that we're going to talk about tonight. I discovered from listening to your show. So, once again, congratulations and thank you for all the songs that I've discovered from listening to your show, and all the authors and all the musicians that I've got to listen to from your shows, whether they be on radio or podcasting. So it's a wonderful thing. And like I said, thank you. I remember, calling you up when you were on the radio and just asking to, because I was thinking about, starting the show with my cousin and just asking for your advice. And the one thing that you said that, I'll never forget was, once you get started, it will never end. And you were absolutely right. This is just nonstop. The listening, the learning, the reading. It's just a machine that will not stop.
Never ending.
It's one thing to be a fan and to love the music. It's another thing to make a commitment like this, whether it's once a week or once every 2 weeks, because people start to rely on it. They look forward to hearing your next show. You don't want to disappoint them. You never want to go too long without having something new. And no matter how much work I've done, there's always the next show. It never ends. It's just the way that it is. Even when I'm in quarantine, I have more free time now. So I'm looking at it as an advantage for me to create and produce more Every Little Thing shows for the syndicated version.
Gotcha.
So the more shows you have out there, the better off you are.
Right. Very good. True. Well, thank you for that, Ken. And, before we get into tonight's topic, I do want to mention a few things. Yesterday, Friday, was it the 29th? Yesterday, I believe it was?
Yes.
On Paul's newsletter, he did kind of make a small announcement. It's not an official announcement, but it's kind of like a announcement for the announcement, I guess you would call it. But the last sentence on his newsletter read, "See you next month, where we'll be revealing something we've been quietly cooking up." So now, if you're thinking about things that you could cook, I mean, what could they be? Andy, any? Yeah, maybe maybe a flaming pie, absolutely. But we've kind of known about this since early this year. Where did we see this bit that it said where it was announced for July 24th? Do you remember where we got this information from, Ken?
Usually I get it on the internet, and it's usually from something Steve Marinucci posts.
Right.
Somebody on the hot.
But it's like, but it's like rare to hear about something that early. Because it,
That is true. You find out usually about 2 months before it happens.
Right.
It's very tight-lipped. And for so long, we were hearing it was going to be London Town and Back to the Egg.
Right.
And, once we heard it was Flaming Pie, I think a lot of people were surprised. Right. But, let's just hope it does happen, that there aren't more delays.
Yeah, and, I mean, it should. I'm hoping it happens too. I don't think
that little teaser.
With this little teaser, I guess we can assume that it is indeed coming. You know, I wasn't surprised that Flaming Pie was going to be next because there was really no rhyme or reason with, you know, what release was next for this series.
None.
You know, they really didn't go in any specific order. So, you know, I'm
Which
fine
I prefer.
yeah,
I
I'm
prefer
fine with
that.
Flaming Pie. I mean, obviously, it would have been nice to end the Wings period, but now we got something to look forward to later, either later this year or next year. So, but there's so many great things. I mean, one, we can assume that, you know, Ubu Jubu is going to be included. You know, obviously, we're going to have all the B-sides. You know, maybe. You know, I'm really hoping that if I'm almost sure positive that's going to be Ubu Jubu stuff on there, but a lot of great stuff that Ken, did you listen to Ubu Jubu as it was being played originally?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I loved
Right.
it. I
Yeah.
thought it was a great concept because it was all about Paul and not only his own music, but artists that he admired. You
Right.
know,
Right.
he would mix in Ethel Merman, you know, if he
Right.
wanted to, into
Right.
the show, or an R&B song, you
Right.
know, and just like the Lost Lennon tapes,
Yep.
you heard a lot of stuff there for the first
Right.
time that you never
And
heard
that's
before.
where I was going with this, because, you know, that's what my hopes is for this set was you're going to see stuff like I Love This House, which I think that's where we first heard. That song was on the Ubu Jubu, the, you know, the early versions of Beautiful Night, you know, songs like
Right.
Squid, you
Yeah,
know.
they
you know, stuff
they got releases on those singles, on those standalone singles
right,
at that time.
right.
Initially on Ubu
But
Jubu.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just
Right.
hope that they don't release it like they did on the CD singles as segments from the radio
Segments.
show.
Right. Gotcha.
I just hope that they release them as pure songs.
Well, they did with
Gotcha.
I Love This House. There was its own track, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it was it
Okay.
bundled with Ubu Jubu? I can't remember.
I'll have to go back and look.
Let's
Because
look.
I know it's on one of the CD singles, right?
Got it right here.
It's on, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, no, it's bundled in with Ubu Jubu. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they bundled it in with the episode. So if they make it available separately, Ken, to your point, that
Right.
would be
Yeah.
that would be
One of my
So-
favorite songs was Love
Yeah.
Mix.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the song Love Mix a lot, and that was part of the segment. You know,
Right,
I'd rather
right.
have the whole song in the clear.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Was
Yeah, so
Ubu Jubu Westwood one also, Ken?
I think
I
so.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't last very long though. It was either
One
just
summer.
one or
No.
Summer
Yeah.
summer of '94 or '95.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do a show on that in the coming months, so I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, another bit of not necessarily news, but a release that just popped up on YouTube recently, and that's you know, Mike McGear, who, you know, released the McGear album with the help of his brother, and he performed 2 songs on a Spanish television TV show called Señorita, or I can't pronounce it anyway, but it's Ladies and Gentlemen pretty much in Spanish. You know, but he performed Simply Love You and Leave It. Obviously these were just lip syncing performances, but really fun to just see you know, a little bit of the past, you know, television show from a different country. Really interesting to see what they thought was entertainment back then, and there was some really cool entertaining segments on there. So if you want, just type in you know, Leave It or Simply Love You, Spanish television, and it should pop up. I guess I think the TV channel was RTVE, was the station. So not bad stuff. So if you're a fan of the McGear album, check that out. So like I said earlier in the show, tonight we're going to be talking about collaborations and contributions Paul has done throughout the 2000s. So we'll say 2000 to 2019. As we all know, Paul has generously given his time throughout his career, whether it's giving someone a song, producing their song, you know, playing bass or drums, or lending vocals to someone else's song. I mean, Paul, he's been doing this, Ken, you know, since what, Peter Gordon with what's the track?
A World Without Love.
World Without Love. Yes, yeah. You know, it was one of the first
Okay.
things that he's given away.
Well, John and Paul, a lot of the artists in the Brian Epstein stable was all around that time anyway.
Billy J. Kramer, Bad to Me. You know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that was really John's song, but some of the Billy J. Kramer stuff was written by Paul. like from a window, for
Right.
example. I'll keep you
Right.
satisfied.
So he's
That's
done this.
Cilla Black. Cilla Black.
Cilla Black.
He wrote.
Right.
He
Right.
wrote 3 of her hits.
Right. And
So
then
yeah,
flash forward to late '60s. Obviously, gives "Come and
Mary
Get It" to
Hopkin.
Badfinger, and "Goodbye to Mary Hopkin," which was I think a #2 hit over there in the UK.
Right.
I think it was a top 5 here or a top 10. And
No,
then,
it went
or
to
was it just
14 here.
14 here? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's "Come and Get It," I think was the top 5
Yeah.
hit here. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, yeah. And then throughout the '70s, giving songs away like 4th of July, "Let's Love," "Mine for Me," playing on other people's tracks. Obviously we all know of the work that he did with Ringo. In the '80s, he has "On the Wings of a Nightingale" for the Everly Brothers.
That's one of the best.
Yeah.
Really one of the best songs he's written for another artist, really. Tailor-made for them, I think.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And again, he gives songs to Ringo for "Stop and Smell the Roses." In the '90s, he works with Allen Ginsberg for that, the Ballad of Skeletons release. And in the 2000s, it's really just, we got a list here of like 43 songs, I think, that he either just plays bass or drums or contributes vocals to. And man, I mean, there's some really good stuff here, and we're going to talk about that today. And Ken, it seems like when you do the news, it's almost like you mention, Paul contributes vocals to this song, or
right.
Plays bass for another song. So let's talk about some of our favorites from this list. And Andy, do you want to do like 1 or 2 songs that you really enjoyed from this list? And we'll start. We'll do 2 at a time or something like that.
Sure. I picked out 10 out of that list.
Okay.
Like everybody else did.
Right.
First 2 that I wrote down, from like lowest to highest, I went with the "Come and Get It," the Hollywood Vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I enjoyed the revisit to that. It was just a different take on it, a little heavier. I enjoyed that quite a bit, coming back to that again.
Right.
And then the one that he did with Lulu, "Inside Thing," from I guess 2001. I remember actually that came out. I don't know when I heard it, but it was around the time of Wingspan, right around that era.
Okay.
And I remember liking that. It was like this quasi rap thing, but I liked "Inside Thing" because with the pastiche to "Let Him In," obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Right. But those are 2 that I just jotted down real quick that I liked right off the top of my head, especially "Inside Thing," because I remember when it came out.
Right.
The thing that's really unusual about an "Inside Thing" is that it combines the original vocals that Paul did for "Let Him In" with new vocals and older Paul. Mixing that with Lulu's vocals, and then there was a rapper guy in the song too. It was really a combination of a newer song, "Inside Thing," mixed with "Let Him In."
Yeah.
So, but it was built around "Let Him In."
Right.
So, just that approach. Why 2 different vocals, a younger Paul and an older Paul? I don't know. Why.
And why wouldn't he do that for his own release? You figure that would have been something pretty cool that he could have done for an album of his own. So, 2 of the songs that I'll start with that I really enjoy. I really dig "That's All Right" that he does on this "Good Rockin' Tonight," the Legacy of Sun Records. For 2 reasons. Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana. You got the originals playing with him. He does a really good version on the Russian album, which I enjoy that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this, whenever you got 2 of the originals that played back then, especially with Elvis, I mean, that's something special. And there's a clip of them performing it on YouTube, so you can check that out.
Right.
Let's see here, another one. And I'll show the album too, because Andy, I agree. This Hollywood Vampires, to "Come and Get It," him revisiting that. I'm not always the biggest fan of when an artist revisits a song, but I did enjoy this. I liked his vocals. I liked the backing vocals.
Yeah.
I like the little coda that's at the end of the track. I think that's pretty good. And I'm just you got Abe on drums on this too, and it's just a great rocking track. And
that whole album too.
There's a great Cold Turkey version of Cold Turkey on here too.
Alice Cooper.
Yeah, Alice Cooper on vocals.
Alice Cooper on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah. So, all right, Ken, what are your first two?
Okay. There's so many here that I want to include. And I just want you to know that of these 43, there were a number of songs that were really soundtrack songs.
Right.
From Paul, there's still Paul McCartney releases, but because they weren't on Paul's albums, they're kind of kept separate.
Correct.
But anyway, I really love duets, especially when they're done extremely well. And among my favorites from all of Paul's is Heal the Pain with George Michael.
Yeah.
I love George Michael when he was in Wham, and then he had a solo career. And especially after his passing, I've come to realize what an amazing singer George Michael was. And Heal the Pain was a song that he had already put out as a single just by himself. Right. And then he got Paul to do this duet, and they blend together so well
perfectly
on this. Yeah. And I can't imagine why that wouldn't have been, a hit record. Maybe if that was around the time when George Michael was really hot. But, it's a talent that, I wish we'd talk about more about the Beatles, is how well, because they were so schooled in harmony work. They're among, the great harmony singers. It just seems like who Paul sings with, he blends with them so well. So Heal the Pain is definitely one of them. And that was on a compilation called 25. For anyone that wants to look that up, celebrating George Michael's 25th anniversary in the music business. I'm also going to say, because it's something so unexpected, but this song that he worked on with Steve Martin, Best Love. This is a song that Steve Martin wrote, and it's really like a bluegrass type arrangement to the song, and Paul sings it. This isn't a duet; it's strictly Paul on vocals. Yeah. And it's really a good song.
It's an excellent song. I'll be talking about it later. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just got to look up because I forgot the name of the album that it's on. Do you have it there?
The Rare Alert.
Yeah. What year was this?
2011.
Okay. Yeah. So, that's another thing, is just finding out about these things as they're happening is not all that easy. But thankfully, because we get news on a day-by-day basis, you can find out about these side projects, as they call them. And you never know what surprises you're going to find.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All right, Andy, back to you.
Number two. Okay. It's kind of a 1-2 punch, and if I'm stealing somebody's thunder, I'm sorry. But these are two awesome songs. Both great rockers, Maybe Baby, and I'm Partial to Your Abracadabra.
Yeah.
Those two songs are like, especially Abracadabra. I mean, that came out, I want to say, around 1999. It was a tribute to Ian Drury, I think.
2001. 2001. Yeah.
And Maybe Baby was on a soundtrack to a film
called Maybe Baby, 2000. Yep.
I'm not the biggest guy of I'm not a huge fan of the one-off collaboration type stuff with McCartney. I hear it in dribs and drabs. Obviously, the pure McCartney songs that Ken mentioned earlier, like Hope for the Future and I Want to Come Home. Those are Paul McCartney songs.
Right.
So my radar has never been really attuned to some of these other things. I just, being a Paul McCartney fan, you read about, hey, he did this with Lindsay Pagano and you did so bad. But if I wasn't reading about it on a Paul McCartney page, I wouldn't have known about it. So
yeah.
It's the same thing with some of these other things, like Hollywood Vampires. It's never really pushed as a Paul McCartney project, right? So it's kind of just, it's never been my cup of tea to just kind of zero in on all the, I didn't know about Best Love till we started doing this show with Tom, and Dylan told me about it. I didn't even know about it. So for me, it's got to be under that Paul McCartney umbrella for me to delve into it. But that having said that there's these collaborations are just off the charts good. I mean, in terms of his vocal delivery, especially on Partial to Your Abracadabra, that's just ever. And Maybe Baby is just note for note as good as the original in my opinion too.
Cool. Yeah, and that's Buddy Holly, right? Maybe
Yeah.
Baby, which
Yep, Buddy Holly.
he owns the rights to, so I'm sure he can do that song
Yeah.
whenever he feels necessary. Cool, great choices. Go ahead. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, cool. My next two are pretty much related, so I'll just do them together. The first one, obviously was probably my favorite rock vocal from Paul, maybe just behind I'm Partial to Your Abracadabra. I mean, that's just a great rock vocal from Paul, but, cut me some slack from the Sound
Yeah.
City, Reel to Reel soundtrack. I thought those three. I think the nickname was Sirvana for that project. Great nickname there. But those individuals, I thought they blended well. I love the cigar box guitar that Paul plays on that track. It just brings a really cool sound to that song, and just a great rocker altogether. So check that out if you haven't heard. And the other one is I'm kind of a fan of when Paul drums, and I'm a really big fan of Sunday Rain. That's on the Foo Fighters album, Concrete and Gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's Corey Hawkins, the drummer, actually is on lead vocals, Taylor Hawkins is on lead vocals for that, and Paul does drums on that, and really great rocker as well. And I think Paul does a great job on drums there, and really cool song. If you listen to that song at the end, there's a really short piano piece at the end there, and there's no credit to it, but I kind of wonder if they just took a piece of Paul playing piano and then stuck it right at the end of that. But pretty interesting. So, but those are my next two, and Ken, we'll shoot it over to you.
Yeah, that's another fun thing to explore. Paul's drumming for other people.
Yeah.
Especially like Steve Miller,
Right.
My Dark Hour. Killer drumming on that song.
Right.
By the way, before I mention these two, kudos to the two of you for I'm Partial to Your Abracadabra. Really a tremendous track. And for anyone that doesn't know Ian Dury's work, he was known for Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll and Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. And he actually passed away around that time. And
2001, I want to think, or 1999, maybe.
Maybe he died in '99, and then they did the tribute album in '01.
Right.
So this is Paul doing one of his songs, and I even heard only recently that when Ian Dury was in the hospital, Paul was paying for his hospital expenses.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So he must have been somewhat close to him.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
You never hear about, there's stuff like that where he just covers, that's just cool, just that he did something like that.
It's the kind of thing he's not going to talk about.
No.
Right.
But it just people just like to just label him. But there's just another example of why he's just a good guy.
Yep, definitely. Couple songs I want to mention here, more duets. There's A Friend Like You.
Yeah.
With Brian Wilson. Unfortunately, Paul didn't write the song in any way. It was written by Brian and Stephen Kalinich, who is a good friend of mine, longtime great poet who has written with Brian and Dennis Wilson and a bunch of other good people like John Tiven and P.F. Sloan. And it's a really nice duet. I wish there was a little bit more of Paul. He really only sings the title and he harmonizes with Brian. But it's a really nice song, just Brian talking about, what a good friend Paul is to him. It was really Stephen Kalinich writing that about his friendship with Brian, but you don't get that from listening to the song. You think it's about the two of them.
Yeah.
But it's a really good song from Getting In Over My Head from Brian Wilson. And also because this is another legend, singing with Tony Bennett, The Very Thought of You.
Right.
A nice standard right there. Just to have the two of them together. It's kind of like, God, I wish that McCartney had done one song with Frank Sinatra. But Tony Bennett is obviously one of the greatest singers of all time. I think Frank even said he was a better singer than him. But, one of the things that I love about doing this with these different collaborations is I point out what a joy it is for Paul to be collaborating but it's also frustrating because I love the people that he works with, and I wish he'd do more. You know, do another song with Brian Wilson. Do another song with Tony Bennett. You know, I wish
Yeah,
he
he
did more
never
with
he
George
never got to
Martin.
do he never got to do that duet of Suicide with Frank Sinatra, did he?
Nope, no. I don't know for a fact whether or not, and I talked about this on things we said today, whether Frank really heard it, you know, but obviously he never recorded it.
Right.
But who knows? So there's another 2 from me.
Cool. Awesome. Excellent. Andy.
Back to me. All right,
Yeah.
another 2. Gonna kind of stick with a theme on these 2 movie themes because they're both from movies.
Gotcha.
Vanilla Sky and I Want to Come Home from Everybody's Fine, and I know they're not collaborations; they're more just Paul's songs. But they, to Tom, to your point, as you mentioned at the top, you really can't. They're not tied to any McCartney album or anything, so they're kind of just often Neverland, you know. But they're good songs. Vanilla Sky, especially for me, first time I saw Paul live ever was in 2002, and he included it on the set list then. I remember seeing it on the Oscars at the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
We performed Vanilla Sky on the Oscar ceremony. And again, not hugely memorable, you know, in terms of what he's done. Obviously, he's done so many, you know, songs for films and stuff like that that didn't even, you know, Twice in a Lifetime, all the way down to the most famous of Live and Let Die. But again, one that's probably well off the radar, but I always liked Vanilla Sky. And I Want to Come Home, I just liked, I liked the movie too. That's a song that to me could have fit on any one of Paul's albums from that time. You know, could have been on The Chaos and Creation, could have been on Memory Was Full.
Right.
The quality was that good. It could have been on any one of those albums. That's why, again, it's not a collaboration, but 2 songs from movies that I thought were just equally as good in this kind of collaboration mode.
Yeah. My favorite singer singing a song for a movie with my favorite actor. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
I didn't see the movie though. What was the movie about?
What do you mean? Well, you know, it's the father, and he's widowed, and his 3 children are in different parts of the country, and he realizes and he finds out that he's spent so much time, you know, working that he didn't get to know his kids. You know, the kid, all the kids' problems usually went to the mom, and so a lot of the movie then is spent learning or getting reacquainted with his children. Really,
got it.
Very, very good movie. Very good.
So Robert De Niro is your favorite actor?
Oh, since 1990. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Ever
He's
since
one
I
of the
saw-
best.
Ever since I saw Goodfellas. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my next 2 are 2 that I'm really glad I discovered. Let's see here. The first one. Oh, where are you? Give me a second here. Okay, there you are. 2008. It's from an album called London Undersound, and Nitin Sawhney, I want to say. Sawhney?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you pronounce his name. The song is called My Soul. You know, this is a song that I just learned about probably 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if it was from your show, Ken, or just from out of the blue. But really nice vocals here from Paul. There's a lady whose name I cannot pronounce who does great backing vocals, very beautiful backing vocals. How do you pronounce her? Anashka Shankar? Is that how you pronounce her first name?
Robbie's daughter.
No. His daughter.
Yeah, right. His daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. But she's on,
Shankar.
and so she's on this album as well. So I definitely recommend taking, if you're looking for something different, this is it right here. This is a little out there, but good stuff. All the songs are pretty much feature a separate singer. I don't think Nitin does any of the singing on this album, but I really enjoy it. Another song that Paul wrote, he performed on, but he doesn't do lead vocals for. He wrote this song specifically, or he gave it. I don't know if he wrote it specifically for her, but she requested a song from him, and that's the actress Charlotte Gainsbourg. And this album is called Rest. The song that they do is Songbird in a Cage, which I think is just an amazing song. I It's the only song that's in English on this album. The rest is in French. So if you don't mind that, if you can get over looking at that, I think it's a really good album. I've played this album quite a few times, and it's really cool. And Songbird in a Cage is just something I wish he would have done on a Fireman album or something like that, or even one of his experimental albums. But I think it's really cool. It's a cool track. It's kind of almost Oriental Nightfish-ish, maybe, if you want to go there, with it. But really cool track, and I'm glad that's out there for us to enjoy. So
something new.
Yeah. So Andy, what do you got?
Like Ken's turn, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
No, I'm glad you pointed that out about Linda McCartney, because the first time I heard the song from Charlotte Gainsbourg, it sounded like, a song that Linda talks through.
Right. Exactly.
Has that kind of feel to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Nitin Sawhney song took a while for me to grow on me, because Paul's vocals, he really sounds older.
Right.
And it's,
True.
right in your face,
Yes.
there, right there. But now I really love it. And there's a simplicity to it, and kind of fits like in the Chaos and Creation.
Yeah, true. There's a little 45-second bit before the song plays where he's being interviewed almost, and he's talking about how when a paparazzi takes a picture of him, it's almost like he's taking a part of his soul. So I guess maybe that's to tie in with the song My Soul. So
okay.
That was kind of interesting. So
very cool.
Yeah, Ken, go ahead.
Okay. I want to mention Bring It On Home to Me, the trio.
Yeah.
There you go, George Benson and Al Jarreau. And this is one where Paul gives you his all vocally.
Yeah.
He's really belting it out. And, Al Jarreau, God bless him, he passed away a few years ago, one of the greatest of jazz singers. And I love George Benson as a singer. Yeah. And so for the three of them to team up together, what a treat. Again, more people I wish Paul would have done more work
more
with.
stuff with, sure.
Yeah. Could still work with George Benson.
Paul does a great version on his own too. I think that's on the
Russian album.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I like John's better though.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, that's a great medley with Send Me Some Lovin'. It really works together very well.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Also, I'm going to put in there 4 or 5 seconds. Wow. I do love that song. Wow. And, got to give him credit because 2015, his first top 10 singles since Spies Like Us. And even though you don't really hear Paul singing, he did collaborate there with Rihanna and Kanye West. I got to tell you, it's tough for me to hear him sing it when he does it live. It's just him and an acoustic guitar. His voice is really rough on that, but I still like the recording with Rihanna and Kanye. So I'm glad that he did that. I like when Paul works with people that you don't expect him to.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes he just gets I just think he gets a little bit caught in the whole game of, let me try to stay relevant and hip with the young crowd game. And he's just better off saying, you know what, this is what I do, take it or leave it. That's my personal feeling. I think he gets
in a way he's always done that though. In a way he's always done that though. I mean, he's always worked with like Stevie Wonder or Michael Jackson or even Mary Hopkins or a Badfinger. I mean, people that were current and popular, at the time. So I mean, I shouldn't say that I was surprised that he worked with someone like a Kanye West, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it. But
I would say, you can't say that about Mary Hopkins. I mean, Paul launched her career, but
true.
With from like the 80s on up, sorry, definitely he has worked with people who were the hot producers of the time, and I think part of that is not just to be trendy, but he really admired those producers. I don't think he
didn't like Hugh. We know he didn't like Hugh Padgham at the end of the day with Press to Play, but
but he liked his work. The work that he heard with the Police and with Genesis and all that.
Yeah.
So he doesn't work with anyone who he doesn't like what he's heard.
True.
Whether it's Mark Ronson or he
just doesn't like
for Adele.
Well, he like David, not David Kahn, Nigel Godrich. He just doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't like people giving him flack. But I think he gets his best material when he's challenged. I think he does.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I thought Egypt Station and New are two of his greatest albums
Yeah.
for me, but he's made other great albums too.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so, and for people who, you know, love his 70s stuff the most of the time he was his own producer.
True.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, he did have people from the Beatle past working with him, like George Martin a few times, and Jeff Emmerich was there a lot, and Chris Thomas at the end. But most of the time, he produced himself.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I said, bring it on home to me.
Yeah,
Oh, I said 4 or 5 seconds, so that's 2.
Oh, okay, cool. Andy, back to you.
I got 4 left, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think two, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So here's my next 2. I'm going to go with, I mentioned it briefly earlier, Lindsay Pagano's cover of So Bad,
Yep.
which, again, is probably approaching that 20-year age now of when it came out. I don't know exactly.
Mm-hmm.
This was 2001.
Yeah,
Yep.
again, almost 20 years old.
Right.
That, again, because at that time was like pretty wild to hear a younger artist covering a kind of moderate Paul McCartney song, you know, at that time. So I remember that, again, I remember hearing it and hearing that at the time going, wow, this is like a contemporary artist doing an 80s Paul song. This has got to be pretty
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Again, and then his kind of the call and response on that, which is really cool,
Right.
with him and her on that track. I don't know anything else about Lindsay Pagano. I just know that she did a cover of So Bad.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. And my second one, I'm going to go with the standalone. It was part of the Kisses sessions, but didn't really come out till later, was the Christmas song.
Oh, yeah.
The Nat King Cole cover. I'm going to, yeah, right, which was on that compilation. But Ken, he did that with the same musicians as the Kisses stuff, right?
Yep.
All those same
It was.
people, right? Yeah.
The same people, but not at the same time. He did it like in New York City. I think it might have been like a year later.
Oh, okay. So it was separate from that. But yeah, again, nice. I mean, it was a nice delivery, classic. I mean, the Nat King Cole one is the gold standard, but I enjoyed Paul's take on it, and it was on that compilation that Tom just held up there. So yeah, those are my next 2.
Yeah, changed the lyric there, and I should have wrote that down. I forgot
right.
what it was.
That's right. He did.
You know, I changed the turkey.
Didn't he sing it on SNL or something too back then?
I don't recall if he did on SNL. I think he did Wonderful Christmas Time on SNL. That's what.
Yes, he did.
Right.
Yeah.
That he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm certainly glad that he did the Christmas song, because all these years, all we've had is Wonderful Christmas Time and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reggae. And so, you know, I'd love it if he'd make a whole Christmas album.
Yeah,
maybe do what Ringo did, you know?
Yeah, Ringo's did one. Brian Wilson's done one. It would be great if he did one.
Right. Gotcha. I'm gonna second your take on Lindsay Pagano doing So Bad. I really enjoyed it. I don't make it a secret that I'm a big fan of Olivia Newton-John. She is one of my all-time favorite singers. And when I hear that song, I think of Olivia Newton-John, because I think of, you know, kind of like how she would sing, "Have You Never Been Mellow?" It's that. It's very that. And I think it's sung very well in that style. And I think Paul, you know, adding his 2 cents is a nice touch. And like I said, she's a very good singer. I think she, looking her up last night, she did some work with The Voice. I think around 2009 or something like that. That show, The Voice. So she was on there, and but I did see the album not too long ago. I almost bought it, but I'm like, well, maybe I'll wait.
Yeah.
But good album. That's on the album Love, Faith, and Inspiration. So not bad. So I did listen to a few of the other tracks on there, and she sounds really good. Not a bad singer.
Yeah, no, good.
I wish I knew how the 2 of them got together. I just don't know the whole story of that.
Yeah, how did that happen, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one of his daughters or something knew her.
Right,
I don't know.
because when you go to the album, it just says that Paul McCartney contributed vocals. When you look at like Wikipedia, I don't know if the story would be in the book of the CD or not. So so maybe one day I'll pick that up and look into that. But I'm also going to echo Ken Michaels on the song "Heal the Pain" from 25. Just a magical duet. Their voices just work so well together. I think it was said that he wrote the song in the style of a Paul McCartney song. So why not try to get a Paul McCartney to help sing the song with you.
Yeah.
So good stuff all around. George Michael, again, like you said, Ken, I mean, back in the day, Wham, George Michael, I mean, just you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a Wham video or a George Michael video. If you're flipping through the channels, watching MTV or VH1 back in the day when they were playing videos. And he was a phenomenal singer, like you said, and those two voices just worked well together. I would have loved to have seen them do something back in the 80s when Paul was really on his game.
Yeah.
That would have been amazing. So
yeah,
but
and not only that, but if you listen to an album like Faith, there's so many different styles.
Oh, absolutely.
That George Michael does, whether it's Father Figure, which is very gospel-y, Kissing a Fool, which is very jazz. Like, he was a phenomenal talent. He really was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Ken, your last two. All right.
My
I'm sorry.
two.
No. I'm sorry. Your next two, I should say.
Next two, right?
Okay.
Next two. Yeah.
I do want to mention All of Me, which you showed the CD before, Tom.
Yep.
Eric Clapton from the old Sock CD. I do wish that Paul and Eric would do more together. They sound really good there. And that whole thing happened because Eric showed up, helped Paul out on Kisses on the Bottom, and Paul returned the favor and did a duet. So, I'm just grateful for whatever the Beatles have given us through all these years, but there's a part of me that always wants more. And when they're favorite artists of mine, I just wish that Paul could have done more with Eric Clapton and all these other people. You mentioned That's All Right Mama. Wouldn't it have been great if he did more with Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana?
Yeah.
I mean, just as a trio, make a whole album. It could be all Elvis stuff, or.
How cool would the Russian album been if it was just those three?
Oh, imagine that! Oh, man, that would have been awesome.
Paul was such a big Elvis fan, and I'm sure it was an honor for him to hang out with those guys. So, I don't know. Grateful for what we got, though. And
we always want more.
Yes, I know. We're just so greedy.
Yes, we are.
I'm going to say Walk With You with Ringo. One of the best collaborations between Paul and Ringo because, it's actually like a duet since they're bouncing off each other there. Paul adding his part to the song itself. And, just great to see those two friends together with a very solid song. So definitely, I'm very big on duets, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can hear. Okay, Andy, I think this will be the last two then.
They're my last two, yeah, and I purposely put them in these two positions.
Okay.
Number two, we're going to go with Paul entering video game territory and Hope for the Future for the video game Destiny. It was interesting to see him enter that market. A lot of musicians have done that before. I don't think anything before Hope for the Future of his was in video games. I don't think, not off the top of my head, I don't think any of his songs or music was in any kind of video game.
Not at all.
And it's funny, so I know a lot of kids that years ago played that game. So, that game you're playing, who wrote the song for that game? I posted this guy right here. No way. I said, yeah, he wrote it. So that kind of seeing Paul connect with a younger audience through a different medium other than music, I thought was pretty cool. Not that the kids even had any idea who he was, but I still enjoyed it. Honestly, I liked the remixes of the song that are on the 12-inch single. I like the
Right.
remixes better than the actual original song itself. Again, one of those songs that kind of he threw out there, died on the vine, played it live a little bit. Got an inclusion on Pure McCartney, which was nice.
Right.
And I saw him. I think I saw him perform it once or twice back then too. Um, Song of optimism, hope, and these are themes that are kind of universal in a lot of his music, which is always nice. That I always enjoy from his music. So I like the kind of melody and the chorus in it, and building bridges and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So that's my number two. My number one, again, is more for sentimental reasons, and I hope, again, if I'm stealing thunder, I'm sorry. And that's Grow Old With Me with Ringo from just this
Okay.
past year, purely for
Wow.
sentimental reasons. I mean, I can't even listen to that song a lot without even like welling up, because when you think about all of its connections and how far it goes back, and here's these two guys now just from, humble beginnings of Liverpool, in the twilight of their years now, singing a song that their fallen comrade sang.
Hmm.
So when you listen to it in the context, it's pretty jaw dropping, and it's
Right.
for me, it was the clear number one collaboration of the last 20 years for me, just purely for what it meant for all three of those guys to do a John song all these years later with Paul on it. Again, could he be on? Could he be mixed into the song a little bit more? Yeah, maybe, but he's there. He's doing his
Right.
bass on it. But I loved Ringo's choice to cover that song on his last album,
Hmm.
fitting, and having Paul on it. I mean, that just puts a bow on it for me. I mean, if they'd ever work together again, then and hopefully they do. But if they don't, that's good enough for me.
All right. Very nice.
Okay.
All right. My last two are same here. Those the previous 8 could have been in any order. I really enjoy those songs. They're great. These last two are my favorite of this bunch. Again, and Andy, you said earlier, partial to your Abracadabra. Great vocal, great rocker. It doesn't really give you an idea if he plays on the track. By looking at the credits on there, so I'm not 100% sure about that. Interesting thing, though, if you go back to YouTube and listen to Ian's vocals on this, it's nowhere near as explosive as Paul's vocals on this. He really just brought, a really powerful vocal to the song, and Ian's is more of like a little bit of a laid back a vocal for the song, and it's not as heavy either. I mean, it's a good rocker, mind you, but it's not like, the explosiveness that Paul has on this track. So I found that quite interesting, learning more about the song.
When did the first version come out? When did Ian Dury's song version come out of his?
70s, I want to say.
I think
77
so.
maybe.
It was from the album Boots and
New
Panties.
Boots and Panties. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that was late 70s. Could have been.
Right.
Punk,
Yeah,
right when all the punk it was exploding.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is from the tribute album Brand New Boots and Panties.
Okay.
Yep.
So my favorite, I can't speak highly enough for this song. I've talked about it before on the show. And actually when I heard it on your show, Ken, the next day I went out and I found the album, bought it right away, and it's Best Love.
Oh,
okay.
It's just
I know
yeah, amazing track and a great vocal. You described it as bluegrass. My wife laughs because she's from Tennessee, so she's heard a lot of bluegrass. So she calls it clean bluegrass because it's not as rough as traditional bluegrass maybe. But love the vocal on it. Just love the whole production. I love the violin and the banjo playing at the beginning of the song, the opening of the track. I just love the lyrics to it. Steve Martin wrote a gem of a song, and I believe from doing some research on it, a while ago, it was Lorne Michaels that suggested to Steve Martin to have Paul McCartney sing the song. So found that to be interesting. But
2008,
I read
Yeah, the 2011. 2011. Yeah. But if you've heard something else, Ken, I'd be
I
interested
heard
to
a
hear.
different story. I think the producer behind the album, his son or daughter heard the
Okay.
song that Steve Martin wrote and said, you know, it'd be good to have Paul McCartney on this. And
Ah.
Steve had met Paul several times. He didn't consider him a great friend, but he contacted him. It took Paul a while to get back to Steve. And he said, yeah, let's do it. So Steve sent him the demo with Steve singing it.
Right.
And Paul was under the impression, according to Paul's manager, that he was going to do a duet with him.
Oh, okay.
And then, but Steve had said to him, I'm not really a good singer. So after Paul had heard that demo with Steve singing it, and he finally got in the studio with Steve, he said words to the effect that, you know, I understand why you said you're not a good singer. So, but Paul didn't expect to be doing all the vocals on it.
Okay, gotcha.
He did a great job.
But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, it's just nice to see, because I love Steve Martin. He's a big hero of mine. He's a you know, comedy legend. Just to see them work together in any capacity at all. And he's a great banjo player.
Oh, absolutely.
Great talented musician.
Very much. He always mixed that into his, you know, stand-up routine. And he, you know, it wasn't just a prop for him. He really mastered the banjo.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's made several albums with his group. And, you know, I'm sure that if you love bluegrass and banjo playing, you'll love Steve Martin stuff.
Yeah, I mean, not only is that just a good song, but this is a good album. There's a couple really good songs on here. Yellowback Fly is you know, a fishtail story, you know, which is great. Jubilation Day is, you know, a fun story, or a fun story song. You know, Atheists Don't Have No Songs, so that's a fun little song there. You know, so it's a really good album. So I definitely recommend checking this out if you haven't already. So Ken, we're gonna go to you for your last two songs.
Okay. I'm just gonna go with the soundtrack songs too. Okay. And I really love, well, all four of these: Vanilla Sky, Hope for the Future, I Want to Come Home, and In the Blink of an Eye. I think they're all tremendous songs, all very well put together, very good, you know, compositions, all of them. I love the sound of Vanilla Sky, the acoustic, you know, stuff that Paul has done through the years. Kind of starts off like Biker Like an Icon, if you think about it.
It does.
But yeah, but I love the lyrics of Vanilla Sky. It was nominated too for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, also on the Golden Globes too, Best Original Song. I do like that one a lot. Hope for the Future sounds like, yeah, it's for a video game, but it could have worked in any movie. Sure. And I love the whole production from Giles Martin on that. Very big orchestration on that song, which works really well. I Want to Come Home is such a perfect ballad from Paul. It really is. Everything about that song is perfect. It's got the kind of production with orchestration that I kind of feel like, as much as I'm extremely supportive of Phil Spector's work, even on the Long and Winding Road, while a lot of Beatle fans will attack me for that, there are a lot of people who think that he overdid it. You feel that way?
It's the better version.
Oh, we're gonna get along. We're gonna get along fine then. Okay. But I think if George Martin had done the orchestration instead of Phil Spector, it would have been more restrained. Yes. It would have been closer to I Want to Come Home. That kind of a treatment, if you think about it. That's what I think, anyway. Okay. But you know, just a perfect production. And I love In the Blink of an Eye too. You know, all of these moments, and Paul just issues one song. You know,
you could have an album of just of the songs that he's written for movies and make that.
Oh, easily.
Just put it.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Twice in a Lifetime. I love that song.
Because I don't think it's gotten an official release. I mean, they played it at the end of the movie, but I don't think that song was on the soundtrack. Well, that was Twice in a Lifetime.
No, it wasn't. No, it only came out.
Yeah, the song itself was only played at the end of the credits, so it wasn't really.
It came out on Pipes of Peace.
But it did come out. It did come out on the Paul McCartney collection version of.
Right.
Pipes
But
of
it wasn't
Peace.
on the sound. Wasn't in the movie. It wasn't in the soundtrack, right? Yeah.
It wasn't on the
No.
soundtrack.
But I would guess if you bought the, well, then videotape
Right.
or DVD, you would have heard the song at the end. And it was a shorter
Right.
version. It wasn't the complete version of Twice in a
Oh,
Lifetime.
okay.
That's like the same thing with "Did We Meet Somewhere Before" from the Ramones film, right?
Yeah.
Same story.
Right.
There
Yeah.
was only
Rock
a
and Roll High
minute of that.
School.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rock and Roll High School.
Yeah. See, what you could do is you could put in the soundtrack songs of Paul, but include the songs that were rejected for film.
Yeah. Beautiful Night. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And same time next year.
Same next year. Right.
One of the great stories about the movie stuff was him telling the story about Live and Let Die. How when he brought it to the producer, the producer thought it was a demo. I didn't pay for the demo. Where's the real record? So,
Right.
some clown producer had the nerve to say that.
Yeah,
I
George
think-
Martin has talked about that, and
Right.
so has Paul.
Right.
You know, I think they
Yeah.
might have been thinking Shirley Bassey or someone who had success already with
Right.
Bond films. You know.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And before you were on the show, and before you joined me on the show, the first time we had Alan Kozin on, you know, he had talked about that, and that's going to be one of the subjects in the McCartney Legacy series that he's writing right now, because there wasn't really much. Well, there's a story behind it. I don't want to.
No,
talk
yeah,
about it now,
but
but, you know,
this aspect of McCartney's music and for films is a nice, interesting subtext of his career. One that
Yeah.
can be looked into a lot further, because there's a lot of music out there that, you know, a lot of people don't even know about, and if
Right.
they heard it, they would like it. You know, look like Twice in a Lifetime, or
Right.
Did We Meet Somewhere Before? If that was given a proper, you know, release now, who knows what people would think about it? You know.
What was Paul's last top 10 before 4 or 5 seconds?
Well, Spies Like Us.
There you go. Another movie
Another
song.
movie.
So,
Another movie
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
So,
So, and In the Blink of an Eye, I also like a lot. It's very unique how there's a very long intro on that song. It goes on for like
Right.
50 seconds. So, and then, you know, it just seems too short a song because it takes a while for it to start with vocals, but very beautiful melody, great chorus. You know, I do want to mention one other song.
Yeah, please do. Because I'll mention a couple.
It's actually not on the list that Dylan sent us, but and I'm kind of surprised I'm going to say this because back in the 80s we had 2 tremendous charity singles that were, I think, the best for that format that came out of Do They Know It's Christmas and We Are the World. I kind of got tired of that format of all these superstars getting one line to sing. But there was a very good one that came out by the Justice Collective in 2012. And it was a recording of He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. Paul McCartney was on it. And he sings a little bit more than one line.
Yeah,
but because it's one of my favorite songs from any artist. I love the Hollies recording of the song. And it was all for the Hillsborough disaster that took place at the end of the 80s in England.
Right.
A lot of people at a football game got crushed to death.
Yep.
And so this was actually the second, at least that I know of, charity single that came out and involving Paul, because there was another one where Ferry Across the Mersey was covered.
That was going to be
Ferry Marsden.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one is actually outside of the current stuff. The one that he did in '89 with Holly Johnson, and that's my favorite kind of guest appearance of his, the re-recording of Ferry Across the Mersey in '89. That, to me, is my favorite recording that he's done in a collaborative project, because that's just a great. But to your point, Ken, his vocal, and I think he does little lead guitar on the outro of that version of He Ain't Heavy.
He Ain't Heavy, yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Good version, good. But they were both related to the Hillsborough disaster,
right?
1980, the soccer, and you know, both in both cases, both great, you know, charity singles featuring, you know, great moments from his, you know, from Paul, for sure.
But if you're looking for more Paul vocal, Ferry Across the Mersey, he's on quite a lot of that.
Oh yes.
So you know, He Ain't Heavy is just a couple of lines, but To
And
see him on camera, it was
right,
still nice for him to participate in it.
right. And actually, there's another song on here that I just remembered that he did a couple lines for, whether it was just one verse or what. Because I'm not a big fan of the song, but it's a love song to the earth that he did a few years ago as well. So Dylan, you're fired. No more Let's Make It For You, pal. I mean, no.
We love Dylan.
Don't lose any sleep over this, buddy. Don't lose any sleep. But a couple interesting ones that I really enjoyed. There's an album by the Bloody Beetroots, and they have the song "Out of Sight," which is just the
Fireman song.
Yeah, the Fireman. Nothing more, or nothing much, but "Out of Sight." I think was the full length song title. But yeah, this McCartney Youth is on here. There's a video for that song as well, so you can check that out on YouTube. The Yusuf song, Blood and Sand, is a really interesting song. There's a video for that as well. That wasn't included on that album, Road Singer, but it was included on the iTunes version, so you didn't get it on the actual physical media. But yeah, he's on that he does backing vocals with Dolly Parton, which is an interesting combination. Good stuff there. Really cool song that I'm glad I checked out. The artist's name is Fran Healy. The song is Come As It Comes, and Paul plays bass on that. And it's a very nice song. Very nice song.
Do you know who Fran Healy is?
No, I do not.
He's from the band Travis.
Okay.
And they're pretty popular, I would say. A lot of their stuff is very melodic, 60s-ish, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, and he does a good bass line there. He kind of works up to it in the song. As towards the end, he gets more elaborate on the bass.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah,
it's just kind of
bad.
interesting. Yeah. When Paul is asked to do various different things, like here's a song, just give me your bass line.
Right.
Yeah. Or here, can you just produce this?
Right.
Or here, just do a duet, a vocal, a harmony vocal, or just a lead vocal. So it's nice to see him do all these different things. And if you explore it all, you're going to find a lot of really nice surprises and things you're going to like.
Exactly. So cool. That was good. Before we say our goodbyes, Ken, we've Andy and we've been having a good time talking to past guests about this Let It Be Get Back project that's we know coming out hopefully in September. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed or anything like that. But we're getting everybody's thoughts and what they're hoping gets released, or all together, just their thoughts on how they feel about the project in general. And obviously I would love to hear your hopes for the project and what do you expect from all of this.
Well, I'm super psyched about it. To me, the more you get, the merrier. But I'm expecting a remixed version of the album. I really hope that Let It Be Naked won't be included. I think that should be a separate release altogether.
Yes.
I'd like to see at least 3 CDs or more of outtakes, recordings from the sessions. It'll be kind of interesting. One of the things that I loved about these box sets from Sgt. Pepper on is how they present the outtakes in chronological order.
Right.
That's a very cool idea. So you get to know what songs they worked on first through the last song. Be curious to see how they handle Let It Be, because there's so much stuff they have in terms of recordings. How are they going to place it? Will it be chronological? Will they do something like, maybe they could have a CD of songs that they were working on that they released in their solo careers, make a separate CD of that, or a CD of all cover versions, and there's so much of that. Songs that later appeared on Abbey Road, maybe you can keep that in a separate place. But I'd like to see at least 3 CDs of that. I don't know about maybe the Glyn Johns.
Well, see, I was just going to bring that up to you, Ken, because latest rumor in the Hoffman Forum that is indeed going to be in.
Glyn's version's going to be in there?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's, but you got to take all that with a grain of salt, obviously. I mean, there's some truth to some of the polls that are in the Steve Hoffman Forum, and then there's a lot of room But I'd like to think that the Glenn Johns, version will be in there as well.
Well, I think because of the history of it all,
Yeah.
maybe it
of
should be.
course. Yeah. Well, Glenn will, 50 years later, Glenn will get his moment in the sun finally.
No, I wouldn't mind that, but like I said, 3 discs of outtakes. I'd be happy if there were 10.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as too
absolutely.
much.
Oh,
And the film, the longer the better. You know, just think we're going to be getting all this film footage that we've never seen before. That alone is so exciting for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not concerned about this whole concept of revisionism, because the way that I look at it, the more you take in, the more you learn.
yes.
And there's so much stuff we haven't seen before. Unless you've listened to every single bootleg, most people haven't heard everything that they
I've
did on
got
audio.
I've got all 83 discs in my closet there to my right over here. And,
Okay.
and to your point though, about this whole revisionism thing and were they getting along? Did they hate each other by this point in time? If you listen to those discs, I mean, unfortunately I've only listened to the first 5 CDs of this 83 sets, 83 disc set. There's a lot of laughing. There's a lot of joking around. There's a lot of love you can feel, but there's also, a lot of smart ass comments as well. So I'm looking forward to see if there's some of that. Some of the chat.
Yeah.
History is shown when they actually just jammed and forgot all the BS, it was fine. It was when they had to deal with all the the legal stuff, which is when things got nasty. But when they just got down to it, just play as 4 musicians, without it was good. So again, to your point, Ken, about the revisionism and what Giles Martin has said, well, it was the end of the era. I kind of agree with Giles. I think there was when they played, they played good.
Well, Ringo has said that.
Yeah,
if you forget about all the problems and you just focus on the music, it was like heaven.
Right. So
the band working together. But you kind of hope that it would be a balanced look.
yeah.
At the good and the bad. Maybe there'll be far too many happier moments in this film than we see the tension. Will that be an accurate portrayal? The more information you take in, you got to mix this in with the original Let It Be.
Yep.
Which Michael Lindsay Hogg wasn't too happy with the final results with anyway.
Right.
I know that there are a lot of people who take stock in every word that the Beatles have said through the years. And yes, it's all important, but you can't just look at what John said at the time. Those are miserable sessions or whatever.
You change his opinion like the wind.
Exactly. If John was alive today, he might tell you something completely different about the Let It Be sessions. And maybe their memories might not be as strong 50 years later, but however they look back on it is still valid. At any time in your life, whatever comments you have to make, you have to take it all in, absorb it all, and that way you have a more well-rounded look at the whole thing.
Right.
I don't want everyone to think, oh, it was all happy times, because we know that it wasn't all happy times. George walked out on the sessions and came back, so it wasn't 100% happy. How much of it, if you want it to be accurate, how much was happy times? How much of it was misery? The only way you're going to find that out is by examining all the audio and all the video that we have, and then you'll know more. But the more that we'll see in this film, the closer we'll get to the truth, if there's some balance to it.
Well, the film is in the right hands with Peter Jackson, because he will do
restoration wise, yes.
No, but even from a director's point of view, he will be he will not make it a love fest. He will do the period justice, in my opinion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important to you that we get the controversial stuff like Paul singing White Power or No Pakistanis, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's what they did.
Yeah.
It's reality. We should be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
I used to think that bootlegs, I was not a fan of bootlegs many, many years ago when I started out, because it was all below par Beatles. The Beatles had a perfect catalog. Why touch it? Why ruin this perfect image that we have? Now, it's fine to hear outtakes where they're breaking down and they're screwing up. and they're joking, and maybe there might be a nasty remark said here and there. You know, I was just thinking about Paul had said during the Let It Be sessions, "Welcome to the drudgery." At one point, you know, obviously it wasn't that way every single moment and every single day, but you're going to have a mixture of that with the good times. Fans should be able to handle anything, really.
Whatever it is, we will buy it. Come on.
Well, you know, just to get, I mean, if there's some text about it saying, okay, this is done because of this, you know, people will have a reason. Okay, so maybe it was just more of a joke. They're just joking around doing this stuff. It wasn't to be taken seriously, you know. So, but as long as that's written in the book, you know, people can see that and say, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be offended by this. You know?
Also, I'm sure that there's so much worthwhile stuff you can put in this box set and exclude that.
Yeah,
exclude no Pakistanis.
Yeah, I was listening to the really short. It's like 40 seconds long. There's like two little small snippets of John doing "Give Me Some Truth." You know, and he's got quite a bit of the song realized by 69. You know, so fascinating stuff.
Is that considered important? Yeah. You know, if it's that short, should we put it in the box set? Because it's a song that he released later. You got Paul rehearsing another day for a few seconds. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Put it in.
All that stuff.
Put it in.
But I kind of like that idea.
You think alike, but
I kind of like that idea of, you know, separating it on different discs. You know, maybe 4 or 5 versions of Get Back, you know, Long and Winding Road, Dig a Pony, and another disc, you know, songs that ended up on, you know, solo albums. I think that's
I think whatever they do, they need to really make sure that it's, because there's so much material, Tommy, like, you know, you got that 86 CD set. There's so much, like, as long as it's presented in the most commercial way where we can get the best stuff, which it will be, and then maybe there'll be another deluxe set for people like us to get more stuff. You know, there's a lot of breakdowns and talking and stuff. I mean, and listen, some people want all that, but at the end of the day, they're going to want to make a product that is saleable for the masses, and then maybe a deluxe thing for people like us. That's what they're going to do, you know?
That's why you have so many variations when they come out. So, and they're all justified. You've got more casual listeners that don't want to hear every single take of every single song.
Right.
You know, or 30 seconds of Give Me Some Truth, you know.
Right. Or break, or this, right,
You know, but the more they give us, the happier I am.
Yeah, true.
There's more to digest.
Yeah. Especially the video aspect of it, I think I'm looking forward to the most. You know, I've heard a lot of the audio. I mean, I want to see it now, you know.
Right. So, but, you know, there's that thing about with the audio and even the video. It's one thing to hear the audio, but you're not seeing how the Beatles are interacting as you're hearing it.
Good.
And even with cameras on them, if a camera's zooming in on one,
Right.
You're not seeing how the others are.
Right. Oh. I mean, I want to see the frustration in George and John's face while they're doing, take 50 of Long and Winding Road, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, at one time I wasn't a big fan of bootlegs. I'm completely different now. Not that I live and breathe them, but to me, I'm fascinated by every take of every single song. I don't expect that to come out, but the more we get, the more there is to learn, and to see, the recording process and how they got along in the studio, and especially in the best sound quality. Mm-hmm. For years and years, we had bootlegs that were awful quality.
Oh,
you could barely hear what the Beatles were saying in the studio when they were talking to each other. And now you've got, better quality, or they can do so much. They could do many wonders with today's technology where you can hear the audio better.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Same here.
Yeah. October, right? No. When is it?
September-ish, I think.
So is it
I wasn't given an exact date at all, but
there's a Amazon pre-order for the book, and I think that's September.
Right?
I think that's September, right?
And the theatrical release is still September 4th, as far as I've heard.
Well, who knows? But yeah.
Well, great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ken. Ken, tell us about your website. Tell people how they can hear your show. I mean, I know times are a little screwed up right now. I know your live show's not going on right now, but you got the syndicated show. Let everybody know how you can hear that, in your website, your podcast.
Okay. My website is kenmichaelsradio.com. There is a page on there just for the show Every Little Thing. It lists all the radio stations, all the radio stations that carry the show and the broadcast times and links to their own website pages so you can stream them. Also, if they're heard on other platforms like iTunes and, Alexa and TuneIn and that kind of thing. Not iTunes, it wouldn't be iTunes. But yeah, it's on that page. There's also loads of interviews that we've talked about here on the show that you can play at any given time. There's a home page and 3 other pages of all audio interviews. There's weekly trivia every single week where you can win prizes all the time. Half of what you see behind Tom right now are prizes that he's won on my show.
Yeah.
But there's great prizes, books, CDs, DVDs. That's all on my website, kenmichaelsradio.com. There is a live version of Every Little Thing, which is heard Wednesday nights on WNHU at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But because of COVID-19, the radio station has been shut down with live broadcasting there from the station. So I haven't been on with the live broadcast since the beginning of March, but hopefully that will return soon. There's the Things We Said Today podcast, which you can hear on podbean.com. That's on iTunes and also on YouTube, and that's every other week. We just did a show which was posted right now. Celebrating my 2,000 shows and also listing our 5 least favorite Beatles songs.
Yeah, see, I'm interested to hear that, to see where you guys go with that. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, you'll get back to me on that.
Yes, I will.
And then there's Talk More Talk, which you should all know about because that's every other Monday night with Tom and Kid O'Toole and me and Mr. Mayo and soon to be Ken Womack returning, hopefully with every show, we hope.
Yes. Yep.
Every other Monday night at 9 p.m. The next show is this coming Monday night, and we'll be talking about Brainwashed, George's album, on that show.
Looking forward to that.
I think that covers everything.
Cool.
Every little thing.
Every little thing right there. So yeah, I really, really recommend you guys checking out Ken's radio show, and especially right now his syndicated show. So I mean, pretty much all they would have to do is Google Ken Michaels radio show or Every Little Thing at the moment, and they can find it just about anywhere really. I mean, wherever shows are streamed, then I would take it.
Well, the best thing is just to go to the website.
Just go to the website.
KenMichaelsRadio.com. Look at the page for Every Little Thing. By the way, if you want to email me, my address is everylittlething@att.net. And I'll be doing several shows in the next few weeks talking about my history and, 38 years doing this. I'm going to be on Fans on the Run on that podcast. I'm going to be on Tomorrow Never Knows. I'm going to be on All or Nothing. That's Sam Wild's show from the UK. So I'm going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Busy man.
Busy.
Congratulations on 2,000 shows and everything else. It's been an honor getting to know you and watch you, and you're a real pillar of the entire community with all this stuff. So it's an honor to have you on here, man. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey, anytime you want me on, I'm here.
Cool. Andy, you got anything you want to talk about?
No, we'll just be editing 2 legs, and we got another episode tomorrow, and I'll just be in editing hell for a few weeks. But yeah, but 2 legs marches on. The summer's approaching, and we'll be here.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Myself, speaking, Ken said Fans on the Run. I did my guest spot on Fans on the Run a couple of weeks ago. That's a new show hosted by Ethan Alexanian. He's from Ontario, Canada. I believe he's 17 or 18, something like that.
I think he's 17.
17. Very young Beatles fan. If you're interested in hearing people's Beatles stories, how they became a Beatles fan, your favorite song, your Beatles song, your favorite Beatles album, stuff like that. That's the show you need to check out. You can go to YouTube. I think that's the only place he's doing the show right now. So that's Fans on the Run, hosted by Ethan Alexanian. I was there 2 weeks ago. He just posted his latest episode with Al Sussman, which is a lot of fun. Al's been on this show. Al's been on Things We Said Today. For a long time. Really, really good guy. He's been a part of, what's the magazine that he's
Beatle Fan.
Beatle Fan magazine. Yeah, thank you very much. And every year at the Fest for Beatles fans, he's like the bar stool. He's always there, right?
Beatle Fan was like the only way to get info there in the pre-internet days. You got those magazines of Beatle Fan. It was like, as Ken said, it was just like holding on to that information. It was powerful. And then I thought it was very interesting how you held information from Beatle Fan and put it out over the course of your show because you had to, which was cool.
Yeah, but also there were smaller fanzines too. Good Day Sunshine was a very big fanzine at the time. And there were other ones, like there was one just on John called Instant Karma. So sometimes there might be information on John there that you wouldn't have in the other fanzines.
Gotcha.
So, there was one on George. I'm trying to think what the name was. It's a long time ago,
Al Sussman's great. He goes back to Beatle Fan. Yeah, good.
Yeah, Al's a good guy. I also did a guest spot on a John Lennon-centric podcast called Glass Onion. That's my episode probably won't be out until July, but we review the book Riding So High, Beatles and Drugs. I don't know if anybody's out there that's interested in that kind of thing. It's really good book done by the guy that does the Beatles Bible website.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good stuff.
I use that all the time.
Yeah,
Beatles Bible website. Is fantastic reference.
Absolutely. Great site.
Yes.
For the Beatles. Yep.
So great. I want to thank everybody for watching, listening to this show. Andy, I haven't told you yet, but I just want to tell you this past month has been our best month we've had ever since Two Legs has been up and going. So, I want to thank you for everything that you do. I want to thank everybody that's been on the show, including Ken Michaels. Love just talking McCartney. We love hearing from you. We've gotten a lot of great emails, a lot of great comments on our YouTube channel. So check that out. YouTube, Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Two Legs Podcast. You can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's about it. So once again, everybody, thank you. We really appreciate it. So for Ken, Andy, I'm Tom saying have a great day and a beautiful night. So long.
Take care.
You've been listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions by Dylan